On the morning John Bell died, his family found a small glass bottle beside his bed. No one admitted placing it there. According to the legend, the voice inside the house began laughing. For years that voice had whispered from the walls, called the Bell children by name, and answered questions no stranger should have understood. But was it truly something supernatural? And did it really cause John Bell's death? To understand what happened, we have to return to a lonely Tennessee farm, where the disturbance began not with a voice, but with something standing between the rows of corn.
You've just opened a file that should have stayed closed.
In the early 19th century, John Bell lived here with his wife Lucy and their children. They had come to Tennessee from North Carolina and built a successful farm near the Red River. By every surviving account, the Bells were known as an ordinary and respected family. There was no reason to believe their home would become the center of one of America's most enduring ghost stories. According to the legend, the first disturbance appeared one evening while John Bell was inspecting his fields. Between the rows of corn, he noticed an animal staring back at him. It had the body of a large dog, but its head seemed strangely shaped, almost like that of a rabbit. Bell raised his rifle and fired. The animal vanished into the field. At first, the sighting could be dismissed as a trick of fading light, but other members of the family soon reported strange figures near the property. One claimed to see an enormous bird. Another described a young girl in a green dress walking beneath the trees before disappearing without a sound. None of the sightings lasted long enough to be explained. Then, after darkness fell, the family began hearing noises outside the house. There were scratching sounds near the walls. Heavy movement crossed the roof as if an animal was walking directly above their rooms. Each time John Bell opened the door to investigate, the yard was empty. The animal had disappeared. The sounds had not. The scratching shifted from the outer boards to the walls beside the children's beds. Soft taps traveled from one room to another. Sometimes they came from beneath the floor. Other times, the family heard slow footsteps moving through the upper rooms, even when everyone was gathered downstairs. According to later accounts, the disturbance soon became physical. Blankets were pulled from the beds during the night. Pillows were thrown onto the floor. The children said they felt invisible hands touching their faces and tugging at their hair. But whenever the family lit another candle, the room appeared completely empty. For weeks, the Bells tried to keep the disturbances private. John feared that neighbors would laugh or accuse the family of inventing the entire story. Eventually, they invited a trusted friend to spend the night inside the house. He listened as the scratching moved across the walls. By morning, he no longer believed the family was imagining it. The men searched beneath the floors and along the outer walls. They checked the roof for animals. They looked for loose boards, hidden spaces, and anyone who might be playing a cruel trick. They found nothing that explained the sounds, and yet, each night, they returned. Then the disturbance changed. The knocks became softer. The scratching slowed. And from somewhere inside the darkness, the family heard what sounded like a human whisper. At first, no one could understand the words. But night after night, the voice grew clearer. The earliest sounds were described as weak and difficult to understand. A few whispered fragments seemed to emerge from the walls. Night after night, the fragments became longer. Soon the family believed they could hear complete words, and the voice no longer sounded distant. According to the legend, visitors began asking the unseen speaker questions. Some were answered with a knock. Others received a whispered reply. The presence was said to repeat prayers, quote religious passages, and reveal details from conversations held far beyond the house. If those accounts are accurate, it was no longer simply making noise. It was listening. Descriptions of the voice were never entirely consistent. At times, it sounded weak and elderly. At others, it seemed young, sharp, and almost amused. Some witnesses claimed it could imitate people they knew. Others believed they heard several different voices speaking from the same empty room. Whatever produced the sound appeared capable of changing itself. Eventually, the presence was given a name. Some said it identified itself as Kate. Later versions connected that name to a local woman called Kate Batts, who was believed to have held a grievance against John Bell. But surviving evidence does not prove that she created or inspired the haunting. The name may have belonged to the legend long before it belonged to any explanation. The voice seemed to know who entered the house. It remembered questions. It repeated private conversations. And it addressed members of the Bell family by name. But it did not treat them equally. One member of the household would soon become its favorite target. Later accounts describe Betsy waking to violent movements around her bed. Her blankets were pulled away. Her hair seemed to be tugged by invisible hands. Witnesses claimed they heard the sound of slaps, followed by marks appearing on her skin. Yet no attacker could be seen anywhere in the room. The voice was also said to mock Betsy openly. It interrupted her prayers. It repeated her private words in front of visitors. At times it seemed to follow her from room to room, whispering from walls, floors, and darkened doorways. The disturbance was no longer simply haunting the house. It was isolating her inside it. During this period, Betsy was reportedly close to a young man named Joshua Gardner. The two were believed to be considering marriage, but the voice opposed the relationship. According to later versions of the story, it followed them during private meetings, repeated their conversations, and demanded that Betsy end the engagement. Eventually, she did. The legend presents this as evidence of a jealous and controlling spirit, but other explanations are possible. The voice may have reflected family pressure, religious fear, or resistance to Betsy's relationship. Some historians and skeptics have also wondered whether a person inside the household could have created at least part of the disturbance. No explanation has ever settled every detail. Whatever the truth, Betsy's place in the story was now permanent. She had become the person most closely associated with the presence. But she was not the only member of the Bell family it seemed determined to break. The voice had another target, her father. Accounts of John Bell's final years describe a man whose health declined without a clear explanation. He reportedly suffered from sudden weakness, trembling, and periods when he could barely speak. The family believed the disturbances became worse whenever he tried to rest. Some later versions even claimed the voice openly threatened him. But the surviving record cannot tell us how much of that was witnessed at the time and how much was added afterward. According to the story, the voice did not hide its hostility toward John Bell. It mocked him when he was weak. It interrupted his sleep, and it was said to whisper threats from the walls beside his bed. The family could not see who or what was speaking, but they believed it had chosen him for a reason. One explanation became especially popular in later retellings. The voice was connected to a woman named Kate Batts. According to the legend, she and John Bell had argued over a land deal years earlier. After her death, some claimed she returned to punish him. But there is no reliable evidence that Kate Batts cursed the family, or that she was ever the source of the haunting.
As the disturbances continued, the Bell farm stopped being a private place. Neighbors came to listen. Visitors arrived, hoping to hear the voice for themselves. Stories traveled through Robertson County and beyond. The Bell family was no longer alone with whatever was happening inside their home. And that was when the legend became larger than the house itself.
One visitor would later become the most famous name connected to the Bell Witch. A soldier, a politician, and eventually, the 7th President of the United States. According to the legend, Andrew Jackson came to see the haunting for himself.
According to the story, Andrew Jackson heard rumors about the Bell family while traveling through Tennessee. He was curious enough to visit the farm himself. Jackson was already known as a soldier and political figure, but the legend claims that even he wanted to know whether something truly lived inside the Bell house. He did not come alone.
The most famous version says Jackson's wagon suddenly stopped before reaching the farm. The horses pulled, the wheels turned, but the wagon would not move. Then, according to the tale, an unseen voice spoke from the road. It told Jackson he could continue the next day.
The next day, the story says, Jackson and his companions reached the Bell farm. They spent the evening waiting for the voice. At first, nothing happened. Then, someone in the group was supposedly pulled from his seat and thrown outside. The voice had made its point. No one was beyond its reach.
It is a perfect story. A future president arrives to challenge a ghost and leaves convinced that the haunting is real. But there is a problem. No known diary entry from Jackson confirms the visit. No contemporary record proves his wagon stopped on that road. And the version most people know became famous long after the Bell family's time. That uncertainty may be exactly why the Jackson story survived. It transformed the Bell Witch from a local disturbance into something larger. If even Andrew Jackson could not explain it, then perhaps no one could. Whether he ever stood inside the Bell house or not, the story made the haunting impossible to forget. And soon, John Bell's final days would give the legend its darkest claim. On the morning of December 20th, the family found John Bell unresponsive in his bed. Near him was a small bottle containing a dark liquid. No one in the house admitted bringing it there. According to the legend, when the family asked the voice where the bottle had come from, it answered immediately. It said the liquid was meant for John. One later account claims the family tested the liquid on a nearby cat. The animal reportedly died soon after. That detail is repeated in many versions of the story. But like much of the Bell Witch legend, it appears in accounts written long after the events themselves. There is no surviving contemporary evidence proving what was inside the bottle. It said the liquid was meant for John. John Bell died that day. His death is historical fact. The story surrounding it is not. Some versions say the voice laughed during the funeral. Others claim it sang hymns from somewhere beyond the graveyard. Whatever truly happened in the Bell home, John Bell's death became the moment the legend crossed from haunting into murder. According to the legend, the voice did not remain forever. It claimed it would leave the Bell family for years. Then it promised that one day it would return. For a time, the disturbances seemed to fade. Betsy moved on with her life. The farm became quieter. But the story did not disappear with the voice. The Bell family's nightmare may have ended, but the legend had only begun. In the years that followed, every retelling added new details. The voice became sharper, the curse became darker, and the Bell Witch became something far larger than a story told around one Tennessee farm. The events at the Bell farm were said to take place between 1817 and 1821. But the most detailed versions of the haunting were written down much later. By then, memories had changed, stories had been retold, and every person who repeated the tale could add a new detail or remove one. In some versions, the voice merely knocked on walls and repeated prayers. In others, it could predict the future. It knew secrets. It traveled beyond the Bell farm. It sang, it laughed, and eventually, it became less like a ghost story and more like a curse. More than a century later, the story rose again. In 1937, newspapers reported that the Bell Witch had promised to return. People traveled to the area, expecting something to happen. Some waited for signs. Others came simply because the legend had become too famous to ignore. But the promised return never produced any verified proof. Not everyone in the Bell family welcomed the growing legend. Some descendants rejected the more dramatic versions. They believed the story had become distorted by books, newspapers, and people looking for a sensation. To them, the Bell Witch was no longer a family memory. It had become public property. And that leaves the hardest question. Did something truly happen inside the Bell home? Or did a real family tragedy slowly become a legend too powerful to control? The answer may be buried somewhere between the first frightened witness and the last person who repeated the story. But one detail remains impossible to ignore. John Bell died, and the voice was said to claim the death. The first explanation is the simplest. A real family may have been living through fear, illness, conflict, and isolation. John Bell's declining health was real. Betsy's future was uncertain. And in an isolated farming community, a frightening event could quickly become something larger than the people experiencing it. What began as anxiety may have become a shared belief. A second possibility is more deliberate. Someone may have created at least part of the disturbance. Knocks can be made, voices can be thrown, footsteps can be staged, and a house filled with fear can make even an ordinary sound feel impossible. But no one was ever proven to be behind it. The Bells lived in a time when religion shaped how people understood the unknown. A strange noise was not always just a strange noise. It could be a warning, a punishment, a spirit. And once a community accepted that possibility, every new event could strengthen the story. Fear did not need proof to become real. And then there is the explanation no historian can fully measure. What if something happened that the family could not explain? Not a witch, not necessarily a ghost, but an event strange enough to frighten the Bells, and powerful enough to survive in memory for generations. A story does not need every detail to be true in order to begin with something real. The bottle may be part of the legend. The voice survives only in stories. But John Bell did die in that house, and for more than 2 centuries, people have repeated what the presence was said to have whispered afterward. It knew his name, and it claimed his death. Do you believe something unexplained entered the Bell home? Or did the legend become more powerful than whatever truly happened there? The file is closed. The story is not.
Another file is waiting to be opened.